Hi, boys. I recorded this video for you earlier, but YouTube decided not to post it, so I'm going to read it to you again. This is still the Princesses and the Kingshuk Tree. I think we talked about this one. Yeah? Okay. Relax. Be very still and listen. Listen carefully to this tale about four princesses who lived in a grand palace in a distant land. They were very curious girls, so when they heard about a tree of breathtaking beauty, they longed to see it. But this was no ordinary tree. It was a magic tree. Let's find out why. Now, the young princesses had been well educated about everything in their own land, especially about all the animals, flowers, and trees that could be found there. They even had a zoo in the palace with exotic birds and animals from all over the world. And the collection of trees and flowers in the palace gardens was said to be beyond compare. So the princesses were very surprised one day to hear the gardener mention a special tree in the palace grounds known as the Kingshuk, as none of them had ever come across it. The princesses were so intrigued by what they heard that they were determined to see it. That very day, after their lessons, they went to find the gardener and asked him to take them to see this wonderful tree. "It would be my pleasure, your highnesses," said the gardener, "but the Kingshuk tree is a magic tree. People can only see it on their birthday. The rest of the time it is invisible. So I will only be able to take you one at a time, and you will each have to wait until your birthday." The princesses agreed and decided it was only right and proper for the eldest to go first. And so it was that on the eldest princess's birthday, a bright spring morning, the gardener and the girls set out to find the Kingshuk tree. After walking for a while, they came to the edge of the royal forest where the gardener said that it grew. The princess saw a tall, willowy tree standing apart, but the gardener could see nothing, so she knew this was indeed the magical Kingshuk. She stood entranced by the beautiful tree. Its small green leaves were unfurling like sparkling emeralds, and the princess was filled with its wonderful joy. As they left, the gardener asked her not to talk about what had happened so that she wouldn't spoil the tree's magic for her sisters. As spring rolled into summer, the second eldest princess celebrated her birthday, and the gardener took her to find the Kingshuk tree. She gasped when she saw it, for it was an explosion of deep red blossoms, glowing like rubies. The princess swooned as she smelled the heavenly perfume from the magic flowers, which filled her with a great sense of happiness. The gardener asked her, too, not to discuss the tree until all the girls had seen it. The hot summer days were turning to autumn when the gardener brought the third princess to see the Kingshuk tree on her birthday. Her eyes widened when she saw its boughs crammed with luscious purple fruits which hung from the tree like giant amethysts. The magic tree was so enticing that she felt as if it were feeding her with its goodness and generosity. And once again the gardener asked her, like her sisters, not to talk about the tree until all four princesses had seen it. Finally, as winter chased the last autumn leaves from the trees, the birthday of the fourth and youngest princess arrived. Now the gardener took her to visit the Kingshuk tree. She asked to be taken at night as she wanted to see it in the moonlight. And sure enough, its silvery branches, wet with dew, looked spectacular and sparkled as if they were dressed in silver threads laced with tiny diamonds. She felt as if the magical tree was wrapping her in its warmth and magic. The day after the youngest princess's visit, the four girls went to thank the gardener for taking them to see the magical Kingshuk tree. Relieved that they could discuss it amongst themselves at last, the eldest princess said, I will never forget that beautiful tree with its tiny leaves shimmering like emeralds in the sun." "But, sister, you must be mistaken," cried the second princess. "The Kingshuk tree was covered in huge ruby-red blossoms, and its heady perfume filled me with great feelings of happiness." "Oh no, sisters, you are both quite wrong," insisted the third princess. "The Kingshuk tree was heavy with luscious purple fruits which sparkled like giant amethysts." "Well, sisters, I think you must have seen different trees," cried the youngest princess. "The Kingshuk branches were covered in threads of glittering dew that enchanted me with their magic." Had the sisters not been so well-mannered, there might have been an argument. But instead they simply wondered if they had seen 4 different trees. The gardener laughed. "Your Highnesses," he said calmly, "you have indeed each seen the same Kingshuk tree and experienced its magic. But it was dressed for the season of your birthday when each of you visited. To truly appreciate the tree, you need to visit in all the seasons, which of course is impossible because of its invisibility." The princesses laughed. They had forgotten that each of their birthdays fell in a different part of the year and that the tree changed with the seasons. No wonder it had looked different on each visit. The girls also realized that the only way they would be able to discover more about the magical Kingshuk tree was by listening to and learning from each other and anybody else who'd been lucky enough to see it. Pretty cool. The moral of today's story is, what we first see may not always give us the whole picture. A wise person knows that to discover the truth about anything, they must learn from other people's insights as well as their own. Well said. Okay, mijos, I love you. Good night. And I will read you another story come tomorrow. Good night.